Don't we do something?
Yeah, there's something in the screen there. There you go. You're a pro at that.
I could have been a
Computer
computer.
whiz.
I would have shut the whole thing off. Oh, okay. Says first thing, road report. Do you have any road report?
He
Rod?
said he told you.
Yeah, okay, I was just asking.
Oh, the only thing,
Uh-oh, get an echo.
the only thing I got was, what we got on the agenda about the town garage contractor discussion.
Yeah,
That's the only thing I was gonna talk about.
okay, why don't you lead with that then?
Black River, Design called me, who had come down and looked at the building. And they suggested that we, pick a contractor, and then they would be glad to work with that contractor on building codes and stuff like that. But they thought if we went with a regular steel building, which he thought would be the best way, that whoever we got to build it, that's pretty every day. You
Yeah.
just decide how big you want it and slap it up. But he said that they would help with the codes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
If we wished. And he said that he would join us at a meeting if we wished, but he thought what we should do now is pick a contractor.
Huh.
But I don't know.
Well, I talked to Rodney this morning, he called me, and he said he's got a guy named Shaw from White River. It's an engineer that said he would give us some time on the 24th of May. And he would come up, he's passing through town anyway, so he said he'd come up and he'd look the situation over. I don't know if he's looking it over for free or not, but at least it would give him an idea of what we're asking, what we're up against.
Okay.
And then we might be able to carry on, but he's booked out into next year or something. Just
Well,
like
this
everybody.
Black River guy said that he thought our best bet would be to build a new building, complete new building.
Yeah.
And then use the existing building as storage, because he said if we built on to the new building, it would take so much, re-engineering and getting the other building up to code and everything else. And he thought money-wise, he'd be better off to build a new steel building.
Yeah.
Because he said I didn't know this, but he said they put up the frame and then they get the steel, it's got insulation right on it.
Oh, yeah,
And they just slap that up.
Yeah.
And it's all done.
yeah,
And he said he thought that would be most cost effective. But then we gotta decide where we want it. And I don't know, of course, that's all sand anyway, so probably putting a foundation in isn't a big deal except for money.
right, well, that's the last, I think. But I wanted to go back to the very beginning and do we actually need a town garage? I mean, is our town garage unfit, or is it gonna be unfit in 10 or 20 years? I mean, because Rodney first wanted to build something to get the equipment a little bit warmer than 0 degrees outside. So I didn't want to get ahead of ourselves, and if we need a new town garage, then we need a new town garage,
Yeah.
but if we don't,
Yeah, I guess maybe I've been caught up in this. But you might be right, it might be better to just slam up a shack somewhere and,
but also I really want to evaluate the town garage we have,
Yeah.
because like Rodney wants to move at least one, to move the office and then make like a shower stall or something. And I think we really need to think about that stuff to be in compliance with what we need to be in compliance with, whatever that is. But maybe we could do a little bit in our current town garage and then build another building for a couple $100,000 versus $1 million for a new town garage. So I just don't want to lose track of that.
yeah,
But this guy that's gonna come on the 24th, maybe he can tell us more about whether
Okay.
our garage is is okay or whether it's not okay.
Yeah. Yeah, this guy basically didn't think we needed anybody to design a building, but he
Yeah.
said we'd probably need somebody to help with state stuff, you
Yes,
know,
yeah.
make sure everything.
Oh,
is-
yeah. But the other thing I think about is our old garage, I don't know how much fuel oil we use to heat it, but maybe, I mean, we aren't gonna save enough to build a new town garage, but
Right.
maybe by building a new structure, we could actually save money in that sense, because, I mean, oil's $5 a gallon now, and a few years it might be $10 a gallon or $20. So we need to look ahead to
When's that guy coming, May 24th?
May 24th. I don't know exactly what time of day, but I mean, that's a
What
month
day is
away,
town meeting?
21st.
21st, okay. Okay,
Well, Gary, that would make sense too, as far as if we didn't need a new garage right away, then, you know, we could plan financially a little bit more for it and have, you know, more of a building campaign or bonding or whatever it would take. But rather than trying to fix this in a year or 2 years, we could, you know, look at it maybe at 5 to 10.
Right. Okay, we can just keep that in mind. One of the other things he told me was, nothing about town garage, a whole different subject, was they're working on the hone truck to put, there was a pin or something had broken or worn out, but they were gonna have the hone back on today. But he told me 4 things, and I was gonna write them down, and then I got sidetracked.
he just got a new hydraulic pump for the old truck.
Oh, that was one.
Old truck.
Yeah.
But he couldn't set it up, didn't know how to set it up, because it's on-demand pump or something.
Yeah.
So I told him I was gonna look into that for him. But I haven't gotten too far so far. Because I don't really know. I haven't dealt with something like that. So I
Right.
don't know if he's got specs of the pump.
No idea, but he said the people from up north, whoever that is, would come down.
Bacon,
Yeah, they wanted to have the truck brought up there, but he didn't want to drive the old
Right.
truck that far.
right,
But I said, well, what are they gonna charge, $100 to show up and $100 an hour? We might have $500 in it, but we might want, be smart to do that.
Yeah.
So he's gonna look into that more.
okay,
And otherwise, they're grading around town when they can. Things are going well. Larry's out with COVID,
oh, that's right, you said Larry was out.
so he's out until whatever, 5 days after he tests negative or however that works. But there's still 3 of them left. And I guess that's it.
Yeah, because that was why he didn't come tonight, he said he didn't wanna,
Yeah, Rodney's fine, but he just doesn't
Yeah.
want to get out.
Yeah.
And I guess that's it for the road report.
okay,
I can put my glasses back on.
you better put your glasses back on.
Town coalition update, Megan Ashbury, I see your name there somewhere.
Hey, you ready for me?
Oh,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There.
I see.
All
you.
right. Everybody can hear me okay?
Yep,
Great. Okay, I'm gonna start with food and farm resilience. The South Royalton Garden is ramping up for the summer. If you subscribe to that listserv, Meg First has been sending out newsletters that went out today, and there's a welcome meeting on Saturday, May 7th at the garden. And then the White River Lane Collaborative in Tunbridge is hiring a part-time communications person. Sarah Dillon's actually on the call, so I don't know if you all have hired someone yet or not.
We have unofficially, and we actually just yesterday, as of yesterday, are officially moving to a new fiscal sponsor, which we were waiting for in order to make the real offer to our staff person. But the person we have selected has tentatively accepted, and we have been approved by a new fiscal sponsor. So that should all be happening very quickly now.
Awesome. And then in food and farm resilience, Suzanne Long and Meg First are involved in this cohort with the New England Grassroots Environmental Fund. And I'm meeting with them on Thursday, partially to discuss the needs assessments that, well, the community conversations we had with each of the towns over the last month. and then partly to discuss creating an EIN so the Four-Town Coalition can receive funding. So we're gonna begin that process, and hopefully it's not complicated. And then for conservation and rec, I'm working with Michael Saka on finding funding for informational trails kiosk construction in Royalton and Sharon. I believe Michael presented the idea to you in March. Do you all remember this at all?
Vaguely.
Okay. So we're still working on that, and we have volunteers to design and install the signs, which is great. We just still have to determine what they say. And then for community development, the North Tunbridge General Store is coming along. Mike Gross is, I think he's nearly finished with all of the internal renovations, and he is approved for a crowdfunding platform via Vital Communities. And so he's hoping that he can open the store in May. And my next check-in with him is mid-May. So we can see if he's ready to do the soft launch of that crowdfunding. And then for communications, we are going to migrate. We currently have a website on ArcGIS. It's like a story map and it's free, but we're going to migrate to Squarespace. So it's a little more official. And ABC, the Alliance for Vermont Communities, volunteered to purchase our first year subscription. So I'm also working with them to get that. We have our listserv through Vital Communities, which if you're not subscribed, you can subscribe with this link that I'm pasting in the chat. And then coalition structure, we're in discussion with Vital Communities currently about Vital Communities becoming the backbone of the Four-Town Coalition. And we're looking for different funding that we could use in the future for a paid coordinator. And then lastly is housing. And so for housing, Sarah Gentley is going to give updates on the Working Communities Challenge.
Great, thank you.
Great, thanks, Megan. So yeah, so I am here tonight to join you all to speak specifically about the housing work of the Four-Town Coalition. For those of you who don't know me, I am a Royalton resident, so I'm deeply involved in the Four-Town Coalition and the White River Land Collaborative and all of that work. But this is actually something I recently started doing as my day job as of January 4th. So I don't know if you all have heard of the Working Communities Challenge before. It's a competitive grant program that's coordinated by the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston. And it's a two-phase grant program. The first phase was a planning phase, which was awarded to this group called the White River Valley Consortium 2 years ago in 2019. So the White River Valley Consortium is a group of 14 towns in this area, including the 4 towns. So it's essentially the Royalton area, Randolph area, and Rochester area come together as a 14-town area in order to take advantage of this grant and technical assistance opportunity. So the Four-Town Coalition was an active member of the consortium during the planning phase of the grant, which lasted about 2 years. And over the course of that grant, of that planning grant, the consortium sort of had a series of community conversations and chose what topic we should work on for a 3-year implementation award from this Working Communities Challenge program. So the consortium received that implementation award, and our 3-year grant started this past January. It's a collaborative effort that's really looking at systems change. So it's a consortium of folks from all 14 communities, including grassroots organizers, community members, volunteers, but also quite a few organizations in the area, some of whom work directly on housing, like the Randolph Area Community Development Corporation, but also some that work on other social and economic issues. For example, Capstone and Clara Martin Center are a big piece of this consortium. I didn't know Sarah Wright would be here tonight, but she's also a part of the consortium, so it's fun to see her here. So this is really a 3-year opportunity to think strategically about what these communities can do to increase housing that's affordable for entry-level workforce and beginning entrepreneurs, which of course is a huge need in this community. And one of the benefits to working as a 14-town consortium is that we can look at the needs of the whole region and sort of figure out what solutions are appropriate for which towns, because the housing that might end up being created in Royalton might look different from what's created in Randolph, might look different than what's created in Tunbridge, but it's an opportunity to all work together to have access to some resources and technical assistance, even for the smaller communities who might actually have a smaller projects that would be hard to find funding for or resources for separately. So it's a really exciting opportunity. of course, it's my job to coordinate it now, but also speaking as a Royalton resident, I think it's a really great opportunity for this area to make some real concrete systems change to increase this housing, which we know is a huge need. So I'm here tonight really just because this is a piece of the Four Town Coalition work. The Four Town Coalition has had a housing committee, and we are in the process of coordinating that Four Town Coalition housing work with the White River Valley Consortium work. So Megan has been on the steering committee for the Four Town, or for the White River Valley Consortium. And yeah, I today really I just wanted to introduce myself to you with that hat on and share this project directly with the select board. I will be following up again in the future with more specific information about what we're working on, including one of the first things we'll be organizing is actually a meeting for representatives from the governments of all 14 towns to come together to learn more about this grant opportunity and what can be done around housing. And we'll actually be developing that with staff from the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston. So we'll have some heavy hitters there to help us, really understand the opportunity that this is for our communities. So that will probably be the next time I'll have a specific outreach request for you. And what I am going to ask you tonight is just if you could identify one of you who would like to be the point person for me to reach out to with that and other communication requests. And of course, yeah, other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I really just wanted to start the conversation with you all and let you know that we're involved in this.
Yeah, John just nodded and he's smiling, so I'm sure he'll take it.
Great. Happy to talk to you about it, John.
Thanks, Sarah. No, I'm not that I want more things to do, but I think also being representative and representing Royalton, it makes sense.
Yeah, and you were on my list to reach out to as a representative too. So two birds with one here.
Thank you, John.
Great.
Do you all have any questions about any of that?
No, that's you, Mike. Anybody else?
Megan, are you still on the call?
I am.
Hey, Megan, Todd Tyson here. Good to hear you. I can't see you, but yeah, just one thing, and I'll follow up later, thinking about the Four Town Coalition. A number of people in the towns who are interested in music are trying to put together a 4-concert series, 1 concert in each of the 4 towns, and 2 or 3 are kind of signed up, including Tunbridge, and just wanted to maybe in the future talk with you or join one of your meetings to get you all involved, not necessarily in a financial basis, because I think these will be free concerts, but as far as maybe tabling or getting more information out about what the coalition is doing, and obviously maybe some of this housing information that Sarah has.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, that's a
Who is
great idea.
coordinating that effort?
Yeah, the first sort of date I can give you, actually, the Tunbridge concert will be on the 11th of June. Then the one in July is most likely to be Sharon. The one in August will be Stratford, yep. And then the last one will be probably late September in Royalton.
Okay, fantastic.
Who's coordinating that?
Me and some people at the radio station, but also people like Jim Rooney and Sharon, Paul Kiffner over in Stratford, the Murphy brothers and other people in Royalton. So yeah, but we'd love to partner with all kinds of other entities as well.
Yeah, we'd absolutely love to be involved with that. I'll
right,
follow
great.
up with you via email.
Okay, yep, that sounds good.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions from anyone? All right, good presentation, you two.
Thanks for your time.
Okay,
Yeah,
you're
thanks for
welcome.
having me.
We're ahead of schedule.
Uh-oh.
What are we gonna do? Okay, we'll invite Sarah here next, so she can give us an ARPA update.
Hello, everyone.
just
Can you
like-
hear me?
Hi, Sarah. Sorry. Just so you guys know, I printed off, Sarah gave you a slide deck, and that's in your packets that you have on the table. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mariah. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
We can hear you. That's all I can.
Excellent. Thanks so much for inviting me to speak with you all again. It's good to rejoin you even remotely. I know that we've already talked about ARPA together. I think it was back in December, maybe before Treasury issued the final rule, which happened on January 6th. And there were some significant changes, regulatory changes that happened with the issuance of the final rules. So I'm happy to give sort of a bird's eye view of those and then take any questions you might have. I know that the town's already been making progress on reporting and spending the money and all that good stuff. So any particular questions you have on that front, I'm happy to field as well. But again, bird's eye view of sort of where we're at with the regulatory landscape. We're still expecting the next 50% of your award to come in August and September of this coming year. And as you know, Tunbridge's allocation is just shy of 400 grand. We still have to make sure that the costs that are being covered by your ARPA dollars are incurred after March 3rd of 2021. All of your funds have to be obligated by the end of calendar year 2024. And again, obligated, it means you've got some sort of formal written agreement to spend the money, whether it's a contract or a purchase order, something along those lines. And then all of the funds have to be expended by end of calendar year 2026. And anything that you don't spend by the end of calendar year 2026 needs to be returned to Treasury. So in terms of what Treasury says you can spend your dollars on, they still have the four broad umbrella categories of what the eligible uses are. And that's lost revenue, pandemic response, which is responding to economic and public health impacts, premium pay for essential workers, and then the fourth category is the water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. However, the sea change that happened on January 6th is that they really expanded the first category of lost revenue, also known as revenue replacement, to make it far easier for small towns across America to use that category. And so the recommendation of Two Rivers and Vermont League of Cities and Towns is that every community in our region categorize the entirety of its award as lost revenue, as falling under that revenue replacement category. And the reason for that is that it really is the easiest and most flexible approach to using your ARPA dollars. And it's easier because it allows you to spend money on more and different things. And it also requires far less reporting than you would have to do under any of the other eligible use categories under ARPA. So for example, let's say and I should mention too, that you can do any of the projects that you would have done under any of those other eligible use categories in ARPA under the revenue replacement category, because revenue replacement can be used to provide, those dollars can be used to provide government services. And government services are interpreted very, very broadly as any service provided by any state, county, city, town, anywhere in America. So you're not limited to the kinds of government services that you've provided up till this point in time, right? It really blows the doors wide open, and it gives you maximum flexibility for how to use those dollars to meet your community's needs. And like I said, you can do any project that you would have done under the other categories under revenue replacement. So take, for example, let's say you wanted to give a grant to a local business that's really struggled during the pandemic. If you were to try to give that grant under the economic impacts eligible use category in ARPA, you would have to sort of meet a whole bunch of criteria to prove that that business suffered a particular amount under COVID, and then making sure that you meet the Treasury's criteria for how much they can receive. But if you do that same grant to that same business under the revenue replacement category, all of those requirements fall away. So you no longer have restrictions on beneficiary sort of criteria that you have to meet. And yet you're still providing the same service. And in terms of reporting, there's far less reporting that you have to do under the revenue replacement. So again, it just makes the most sense for towns to go ahead and tell Treasury, okay, we're going to categorize the entirety of our award as revenue replacement. The reason why you can categorize the entirety of your award as revenue replacement as opposed to a portion of it is on January 6th, when they issued the final rule, Treasury decided that, before they had given us this rather complex formula and they were asking towns to go ahead and calculate how much money you lost as a result of COVID. And for many towns, it wasn't that much. And that was a real hardship that Treasury realized, and it was imposing greater burdens on small towns across America. So they said, okay, we're going to assume that every community across America, regardless of its size, its location, how it was actually impacted by COVID, we're going to assume that every community across America has experienced a $10 million loss of revenue due to COVID. And so therefore you can claim up to $10 million of your award under that revenue replacement category. And that's why, because every single town in our region has an award under 10 million. That's why every town, every village in our region can go ahead and say, okay, we're going to categorize the entirety of our award as revenue replacement. A couple other notes about this revenue replacement category that are important to keep in mind. You can sort of cover, the final rule explicitly says that you can pay your administrative staff for the time that they spend administering this award. So that means, setting up contracts, doing that sort of thing, doing the reporting. You can pay for your town staff time out of your ARPA dollars, and you can do that under the revenue replacement category, again, with fewer reporting requirements than you would have to do under the corresponding administrative services revenue category, administrative services funding category under ARPA. So again, that's important to note. Go ahead and categorize it under there. If you wanted to hire a consultant, or if you needed to consult an attorney to help you figure out how to use your ARPA dollars, you can also charge it under that revenue replacement category. One other sort of big message that I think is really important to get across at this point in time, and we've been trying to spread the word to towns across the region, and VLCT's been banging the same bell across the state, is that there is one possible strategy, and it's not something that's going to work for every town, but we wanted to put it out there as an option for you to consider. There's a potential strategy that you could use to increase your flexibility even more beyond what Treasury has done for us as of the issuance of the final rule. And that is effectively to do a little bit of accounting shifting, right? And the idea is that if you were to go ahead and use your ARPA dollars to pay for non-contract portions of your current operating budget, that would enable you to sidestep federal procurement regulations. Because remember, when you signed your ARPA terms and conditions, you said we will comply with CFR Part 200, and that includes federal procurement regulations, which say, okay, you have to have competitive procurement under these situations, and that's what that has to look like. And there are many other restrictions too that come under CFR 200. So, but the most significant really is the procurement issue. But if you were to go ahead and use your ARPA dollars and say, okay, we're going to use those monies to pay off staff salaries and benefits for the next 3 years, for example, that means you're not triggering any federal procurement regulations, and you're also freeing up money in your general fund, which then you can use without any federal strings attached. There are no longer federal timelines that apply to those funds. You don't have to follow federal uniform guidance under CFR 200. It really does sort of maximize your flexibility. The one catch to keep in mind is that you need to make sure that if you have policies on the books, if your town has existing policies over how to deal with surpluses, for example, voting on the budget at town meeting day, a surplus budget at town meeting day, you need to follow that set of policies, obviously. But in terms of this concept as a strategy of a way to further maximize your flexibility in using your ARPA dollars, this has the blessing of the VLCT's legal team and their municipal finance experts. If you have questions or concerns about how the accounting would actually look like if you were to go ahead and follow that strategy, VLCT has just hired a municipal finance expert. Her name is Sarah Macy. She is fantastic, and she is available to actually walk with you one-on-one to help you through the accounting nitty-gritties of how that strategy would actually work. There is no one-size-fit-all guidance when it comes to accounting and dealing with this kind of strategy, because every town's got something different going on in their books in Vermont. So really the message is, if you have accounting questions related to ARPA, don't hesitate to give Sarah a call, and I can pass that contact information on if you're interested. Again, also keep in mind, there are a very small set of prohibited categories under ARPA, which it's important to, keep on your radar. If you were to go ahead and do that sort of switching out of money, where you're freeing up money in your general fund, and then that general fund just becomes surplus, or the general fund freed up monies become surplus, and then you can spend it however you like, you don't have to worry about the prohibition categories within ARPA. But if you are going to spend your ARPA monies directly on projects that you want to do with those monies, then keep in mind that Treasury says you cannot make extraordinary contributions to pension funds. That means anything above and beyond what you would pay during a normal paycheck. You can't use your ARPA dollars to replenish financial reserves or create rainy day funds, even if there are COVID reserve funds, that's not allowed. You cannot use ARPA dollars to service debt, regardless of when that debt was incurred. You cannot undertake a project that undermines efforts to stop the spread of COVID. So basically your project has to be in compliance with CDC guidance. So don't be building, a function hall where lots of people are going to be gathering and, eating Sunday breakfast together, that sort of thing. You can't use your ARPA dollars to satisfy court or regulatory settlements or judgments. That is a rare case, but we actually have had that come up in our region. And so there are certain exceptions to that rule. If the town finds itself in a position where you think we need to use our ARPA dollars to help address this court settlement, et cetera, or a regulatory judgment by DC or something like that, give me a call. I'm happy to talk through all the nitty gritty of the final rule around that particular issue. And then finally, you have to make sure that you're in compliance with any other applicable federal, state, or local laws. So that's really the meat of what I wanted to share about where the regulatory landscape stands right now. I know that I've had some conversations with Mariah about reporting. Has the town finished its reporting at this point in time?
Yes, after you and I got off the phone, then I went and submitted it.
Awesome, that's fantastic.
Yep.
So yeah, at this point, I'll just turn it over to you all if you have any questions.
Mike, think of a good question.
If I understood you, we could use ARPA money to fund our general fund and then use our general fund any way we wanted to.
Right, so because if you've categorized the entirety of your ward as revenue replacement, that means you can spend it on the provision of government services. So anything that's already in your general fund. If you were to go ahead and pay off, for example, salaries and benefits using your ARPA dollars, that means you don't trigger any federal procurement regulations, and then you create a surplus in your general fund, and then you can use that surplus however you please, as long as you're following whatever your local policies are around decision making for how the surplus gets spent.
Neat.
That's free money.
It is remarkable.
Guys
It
ask
really
questions
is.
and I have a question.
All right, Todd, you might as well go next.
Yeah, just, I think that was a very thorough report, Sarah. I really appreciate it because the ARPA thing can get pretty confusing. So there's a couple of possible things that are going on here in Tunbridge. I believe, first of all, the amount that we're receiving is $400,000 in total. Does that sound right?
Yeah, it's
That's
right here,
right.
398.
398. So before you came on, we were talking during the road report about the town garage and maybe a consultant coming by, an engineer, and looking at it, and possibly he's going to have a fee to do that. That would be sort of regular government general services. So if the select board decided they could use ARPA funds, let's say, to pay for that consultant's analysis of a future town garage renovation, would that be correct?
That is correct. If you're going to use your ARPA dollars directly to pay that consultant, instead of doing the switch out with the general fund, you are going to have to follow federal procurement guidelines around that. So if the amount that the contract is going to cost is above a certain level, above $10,000, and then there's another threshold above that, you're going to have that be competitively procured, which means getting 3 quotes. If anybody has questions about the nitty gritty of CFR 200's procurement guidelines, I'm happy to talk through it. But keep that in mind, that if you are going to do a direct payment on a project, you need to be following federal procurement.
But we'd be better off to use the money for salaries or general fund or something, and then take our money and pay the engineer. Then we wouldn't have to go through we wouldn't have to worry about any regulations.
if you just paid, if you used ARPA dollars to pay salaries and benefits, you would not trigger any procurement. If there was a part of your general fund that involves purchasing services outside of the town or purchasing equipment or materials or supplies or that, you would still have to follow federal procurement.
Yeah, and I can think of an example of that that's coming up as far as competitive bidding, or at least bidding that's going to be probably different numbers. Our emergency services coordinator is working with a small group of citizens to come up with some bids for emergency power backup for, well, at least one building and probably two buildings. So when those bids come in, and if the select board were to consider going with one of those bids, they would have some of that extra paperwork. But once again, with the paperwork, ARPA funds could still be used for either one of those bidded projects.
Right, as long as you're following federal guidelines, that's not a problem to go ahead and do that work. Yep, and purchasing that kind of equipment is absolutely within the purview of revenue replacement.
Okay, thank you.
Good questions, Don. John.
Yeah, Sarah, I don't know if you get into recommending policy, but you certainly are watching it in local towns in the Two Rivers district. But I was wondering if, as far as planning for this, does it make sense to go to the town plan or go to the 4 town priorities that we talked about as a community, and then decide, we're really interested in housing, or really interested in our general stores, or more retail here, we're really interested in farming or municipal, buildings or equipment, and then sort of back up from there and say, how do we get from those priorities and tie it into the, that nexus of ARPA funds? And then someone like you help us, with that journey. Does that make sense?
It does. I feel like I've walked with quite a few towns now in our region as they've been figuring this stuff out, and really it varies by town. The approach varies by town. Some towns have come at this where they've said, okay, we're going to have a public hearing, and we're going to have any and all ideas on the table. Community members come, share your thoughts. And in the course of that, town staff will also introduce projects that have already been, talked about for a while. Maybe they're in your capital budget plan, and they'll also be added to the pot, right? And so that's how they've sort of approached it. Some towns have not even had that sort of public hearing process, and they've come at this from the perspective of, okay, we've already had a public process around this. We have a capital budget plan. We know what the projects are that need to be prioritized, and that's what we're going to go with, and we're going to work from there. And so it really depends on what is going to be most acceptable to your community, what kind of process you've used for other kinds of initiatives. And if you're in a place where you would like to have a community dialogue, I am available to help facilitate that if that would be helpful. So I have some funding from the state to help towns have those community conversations. But in terms of like the actual approach to that, it really does vary by town. And I would also say that the other sort of important consideration, VLCT has been ringing this bell for quite some time now, is that it's important to keep in mind that there are other pots of money available that can help fund the kinds of projects that towns are thinking about right now. And it's important to keep those on your radar. And so that you're really maximizing the use of your local ARPA dollars. And one of those funding pots is the bill that's currently working its way through the state legislature, 518, which will provide grant monies to towns to do renewable energy projects and sort of fuel switching projects and weatherization projects, energy efficiency projects for municipally owned facilities. That is a huge win for communities across Vermont. And so many communities in Vermont have been thinking about using their, including in our region, have been thinking about using their local ARPA dollars for just those kinds of projects. So now we have this alternative funding source on the horizon. I heard this morning from our executive director, who's very keyed into the legislature, that it's very, very, very likely that that bill is going to pass and that money is going to be coming soon. So those are the kinds of examples of other funding opportunities that it's important to keep an eye on. VLCT has put together a fantastic website rounding up all the different funding opportunities that they know of, and they're updating that regularly. So I would encourage you to keep an eye on that website and see how it fits with your town's needs and priorities.
What's that bill number, Sarah?
It's Bill 518.
518, thank you.
Absolutely.
Wolf 18.
Hmm?
Wolf 18.
Yeah, Wolf 18.
Michael Saka, you have your hand up.
I do. Yes, thanks. So I guess the question right now, I mean, thank you, Sarah. That's really good stuff. I came in partway through that, but would the select board consider holding these a public meeting, as Sarah said some communities are doing, and looking at, you know, both all the other granting options as well via the LCT website and all, and yeah, just have a public meeting like here's what's coming. And you know, John, you had some great comments and just possibilities for using this, and I think involving the public would be good for all around. So I guess the question is, would the select board consider holding those public hearings?
I think we had talked about it.
Yeah. I think yes, I think that's a very good possibility. And I think the more people know about this, the better. I mean, just so it's public knowledge.
I think also that just from what Sarah was mentioning, it seems like the tip of the iceberg, but if we had those public hearings and the select board had done due diligence, then say like housing was a big issue, Sarah knew of a way to say, if we take, you know, 200,000 in ARPA funds and there's matching grants out there, you know, it would be great to say, like, if we go down this road, we so I think that the community would know, you know, how we get the most bang for our buck for a certain priority. It's already such an unusual amount of money that, you know, we don't usually have access to. So Sarah, would you know, or should we constantly be working with the LCT on this? Where I just feel really ignorant as far as like where the buckets are, where the matching dollars might be for, you know, a town our size to really maximize our, you know, what's coming our way.
There are so many pots of money out there, and the pots are constantly changing, right? So for example, the Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, that money's coming down the pipeline, but none of those programs have been stood up yet. So we have no idea what that landscape's gonna look like. The money that the state got from ARPA, because they got their own pot of money, those programs are still being stood up, right? Like they're not all completely in operation yet. So it is an evolving landscape. I know a little bit, the LCT knows more, but ultimately at the end of the day, I think it is going to be important that the town sort of look through the lists of possible grant opportunities that are being sort of curated on VLCT's website and figure out what might be a good fit. Our office has a lot of experience helping towns apply for grants. So if you're in a position where you're like, you know, perhaps it's a Better Places grant or something like that. If you're in that position and you're curious about how to go ahead and do that grant application, or if you need support, you can reach out to us and we can talk about that too. But I think between all those various resources, we can try to support you in figuring out how to move forward. And I am going to drop into the chat in a moment here, VLCT's website where they list all of their funding opportunities. Does that help?
Yes, very helpful. Mariah, could you capture that VLCT destinate, you know, that whatever Sarah's going to put in the chat there?
Yep.
Great. So
All right.
that particular website has, you know, a very comprehensive list of programs on it.
Nice. All right, any other comments or questions? I don't see any. I guess you've done a pretty thorough job, Sarah.
Thank you all. Please don't hesitate to reach out with any further questions or anything else we can do to support.
Stand by, I'm sure we will.
Have a good evening. Thank you.
Yeah, take care.
Thank you.
Next. next up, legal trails update. It says Todd Tyson.
Yeah, and there are a lot of other people than just me that are involved for a long time. And actually, I want to thank the various groups of people, which of course include the Conservation Commission, the Planning Commission, the Select Board, and the very many residents. I'm not sure how many are on tonight's participant list there on Zoom, but folks that have testified last summer in front of the breakout groups with the Trails Committee, et cetera. There's been a lot of time and effort and passion put into this. And I see it coming to, well, sort of at least an initial close here as we get close to the trails opening up. And around the state, you know, with things sometimes being really wet and sometimes not being wet. But in general, trails, whether they're a big trail like the Long Trail, some of the side trails off of that, or whether they're local private trails or town trails or legal trails, often are ready to start being used around Memorial Day weekend. This year, possibly earlier. I mean, we were hearing about the dryness and chance of fire, so I'd rather have a wetter April and kind of go back to that time. So I'm just here to urge the Select Board to concretize the way forward for the use of the 4 legal trails. I really, I don't know if I'd say I enjoyed, but I certainly took in the last Select Board meeting where Paul Gillies answered quite directly a lot of questions about the Select Board's both discretion and authority on sort of taking a look at legal trails. And I thought he was, this has been something he's been professionally involved with for many, many years. I trust his opinion. I see that he is not only a consulting attorney, but possibly the attorney of record if some sort of litigation were to ensue, and we have heard about that in the past. But I'm here as I was, well, almost 2 years ago. I think I said looking clarity then. To me, it was pretty clear what the trails, the legal trails, how they'd been used for a very long time. And they had been used for non-motorized pedestrian, biking, pogo sticks, as Laura has joked a couple of times, but non-motorized. And one of the reasons I put the non-motorized provision into the revised town plan, which then got revised again and took the language back out, is that those are heavy vehicles. Those are ATVs, 4-wheel drives. You know, you can, we're not talking about class 4 today about what could happen with them, but even in a dry condition, those heavy machines are definitely quite damaging. I think what everybody during this lengthy discussion has agreed on, we want to take care and preserve and maintain our legal trails so they can continue to be used by the public. And so with this period coming up when the trails are going to be really in very good shape, there'll probably be a couple of wet spots that can be walked around, or get off your bike, get off your horse, walk around, but the trails will be pretty ready. As Paul mentioned in his testimony, even though it wasn't really a legal action there, that the Select Board can impose restrictions at their own, you know, they have complete authority over the management of legal trails. So whether the Select Board deems another organization like the Conservation Commission or maybe a revamped Trails Committee or whatever to sort of overseeing, you know, right now is not a good time to open the trails. Let's say it's the middle of May, there's been a big monsoon, not a good idea. Another thing that people have agreed on is signage, really specific signage, detailing what those uses are and being very clear, not only to the citizens of our town, but the visitors that come here, so that there's no ambiguity. There was some talk about having an ordinance, etc. I'm not sure that's necessary, but once again, that's within the purview of the Select Board. So my main point, and then another point that Paul made, which I did not know, and I've studied this a lot, and there are several people with legal training that have looked at this outside of Paul Gillies and some other individuals, is that I didn't know that if a right-of-way was, for instance, let's say, you know, a big sinkhole came up or a tree fell over, that a temporary right-of-way around that obstruction is sort of granted. Now, I don't know how that affects if you're outside of the 48 feet of the right of way and you're actually going, I don't know about that part, but that was news to me, and that was kind of interesting. So that's my general point, is being very optimistic that the select board will move forward and really get the trails, when the time is appropriate, opened to non-motorized use as they have been used for decades and decades. And I think George probably has some comments as well, or he wouldn't be here.
Yeah, mostly along those lines. I wanted to get a little bit more specific as far as it doesn't. This is not something the select board or the town really needs to take on, is going out and re-signing or putting up signage. There's plenty of volunteers out there to go ahead and work on that project in conjunction with the wishes of the select board. So specifically, I think there's been some occurrences recently that have made better signage seem like a really good idea. There was a fairly large off-road vehicle happening of some type that was several weeks ago. We saw the Jeeps around that were pumped up, and they were, I heard that some property owner actually had to stop them from coming through a legal trail. And these were many vehicles, and so it could have been really something very significant. And it made me realize that better signage could help protect people from that. Can you imagine a car trying to go down over to Euclid's from your place?
It wouldn't be
really
coming
bad.
out.
But I think it's a sport. It's a real thing.
Yeah.
So I was thinking that some better signage, would be really good, not only for closing down those trails seasonally, but also for year-round clarification on what's allowed in that area. So that's something that I would be interested in taking on and finding volunteers to help out with that project. So I guess I'm officially asking the select board for permission or at least an acknowledgement that it would be worth my time to have signs made up, and then maybe get some consultation on where those ought to be placed. But my goal is not to burden the town, but to also clarify trail use, and specifically there's one trail has been closed down, as we know now, for 1 season, 2 seasons. It's open only to walking, and the sign says that the trail is closed and it's only open to walking. And I've been through the trail several times, and during this time of year, it shouldn't even be open to walking. But once June and July come around, 80% of that trail is perfectly travelable by bicycle or skateboard without, it's no different than any other dry portion of road. There's only a few small wet areas. And I think that the requirement to not ride your bike at all on that trail is unreasonable. And it appears to just have been a way to just close that trail down. And that's, I would like to replace the signage with something that says more specifically that this trail has delicate areas and everybody should walk only through wet areas to prevent damage. But there's no point in having to walk anything across perfectly dry, perfectly fine trail. So I think that seems like a reasonable option to move forward, and that to close the trail in the manner that it is now is just unfair to the uses of the trail, and and I'm not sure, why it was decided to do it that way. It really doesn't matter. I'm just suggesting another way forward in order to just, be able to rectify the situation.
Thank you, George. Well, my opinion is if we do that, the select board, have got to get on the stick and decide what we want to put on the signs.
Right?
Yeah, or
Yeah, so-
else you bring us suggestions or something.
That sounds great. I
That we
would,
can approve.
I
Yeah.
think to look at other examples of how other trails do that, I'll be able to find some options and I can send them to you.
Yep. John,
Hi, thank you. Do you mind if I take this off?
no,
Let's
go
sit
ahead.
back here.
You're over there. Just keep
I'm
your
over
distance.
here. It's been a long road. It's taken a long time. I think some progress has been achieved. I guess to my way of thinking is that the progress that we've made is not thinking about this as a system, but as a bunch of individual problems that present different opportunities and different possible solutions. And, I brought the issue of the Baptist Hill Trail to the select board. I think we reached a satisfactory conclusion with respect to that. It goes through my pastures. I know you've had a long conversation with Cal Hemingway, and I think you're making progress on that trail. I don't know where we are on the crossroad, but on the Orchard Trail, I think we are having, as far as I know, productive conversations about trying to find a way of rerouting the right of way in the trail that will achieve hopefully help every user group achieve their objectives. And that will protect the property owner's interests. So we're trying to get to win-win-win. I think I'm disappointed those discussions haven't gone faster, but they are proceeding. I am grateful the select board decided to put a pause on things by putting in place a temporary policy that says, walking of the trails for the time being. And you've got these signs up and everyone, as far as I know, has complied with them. And I think we need to proceed with the process that's underway. I think it would be counterproductive to cooperative conversations and trying to get to a solution to force any issues prematurely. So I encourage, since you leave in place the policy that you had in place for a year or two for all the trails while we're working out the resolution of all these individual trails. Specifically on the Orchard Trail, I know in February, I think it was, the Planning Commission sent the select board a memorandum recommending that a resource specialist be hired to look at the natural resources of a proposed reroute that I put forward. And as I recall, the select board discussed that idea and endorsed that idea. And so would be anxious to see that. I don't know where that stands, but I think that can go forward because I am persuaded myself that the proposal I put forward is a potential win-win-win. It's not without challenges, it's not without financial cost, but it is an alternative that can achieve everyone's objectives. And there's no other alternative out there that I'm aware of. So I think we need to pursue that with deliberation, with the help of experts, and try to see if that works. So that's my pitch, and I think it would be a mistake to say, well, let's just open up the trails and because that's going to lead to conflict. And we're trying to keep the temperatures down. We're trying to have a civil conversation. We're trying to understand each other's interests, and we're trying to come to an accommodation. That's my position.
All right. Briefly,
Could I ask you to define, you said conflict at the end, and then I have some questions about the alternative trail. But so how would you define this eventual conflict that you see if things are not going the way that you've just outlined?
That's what we're trying to avoid.
But we're just trying to figure out, because you are an attorney. No, just you'd rather keep it vague. Okay,
No, I'd rather work with you cooperatively, Todd.
Well-
You know my legal position, and I know the town's legal position, and we know all that.
Okay.
We don't have to posture about that. We're trying to get to yes. We're trying to get to yes.
could I go over the alternative trail, which I did actually, and I thank you for generously welcoming George, Michael Sack, and myself. And of course, there was another group that walked that same alternative trail. And I believe if we added up, or at least did, kind of went through the people individually, there were members of the Legal Trails Committee, the Planning Commission, and the Conservation Commission, and George and I, more the general public users of the trails. And I don't believe any of those individuals think that that is a viable alternative route. And when you've been asked about other alternative routes at your farm that would be more viable, both financially and also for the environment. Obviously, there were lots of stream crossings, et cetera, culverts, bridges that would need to be built apparently at the cost of the landowners, not of the town, and probably in the six-figure range. If there are other alternative routes that we're not aware of, that you have been thinking about, other than the one that we went on, that you gave us a map.
The only alternative, and I know the Dodge Farm very well.
Mhm.
I've considered all the alternatives. I'm not sure everyone else has had the same opportunity I had to think about alternatives. I'm not aware of another alternative that separates horses from bicycles, dogs from bicycles, hikers from bicycles, keeps bicycles in potentially large numbers away from the house. So in terms of the route, I think this is ideal. The biker's stated objective is to try to not lose, to stay off the paved road and not lose a lot of altitude. This achieves that objective. I think it's also true that this alternative has minimal environmental impacts. There are fewer wetlands on this route than there are in the Orchard Trail. Elijah Schumacher from DEC came last fall, and he reviewed the work that Jeff Parsons did on the Orchard Trail. And he's confirmed basically what Jeff had found, that there are class 2 and 3 wetlands in the Orchard Trail. But then he and I took a walk on this proposed alternative trail, and he didn't walk the whole thing, but he walked a portion of it. And we walked it very consciously in order to avoid wetlands, and that was the whole point. And he wrote a report, which he sent to me, which has now been submitted to the town, in which he said, after we looked at the Orchard Trail, we also looked at a potential alternative trail route through beach and mixed hardwood upland forest to the north of the house envelope, which would easily avoid all wetland and buffer impacts. I'm not a wetland scientist. I don't think anyone in the room is a wetland scientist. But I believe that there are fewer wetlands on that route than on the Orchard Trail route, certainly.
Did you get, can I interrupt before I forget? Did you get a report from anyone about the wetlands on Orchard Road Trail? You mentioned that there were several.
Well, a year and a half ago, I hired a consultant, Jeff Parsons.
Yeah.
Who came and who did a report, a 2 or 3 page letter, which has been circulated. And this guy, Elijah, came out from
Yeah.
DEC, and he looked over the same terrain and said, and agreed with what Parsons had
So
said.
you've given that report to the town?
And I believe that Rudy got this and circulated it to
Oh,
the
I
planning.
don't remember. Probably I've seen it.
And I mean, I'm happy to make a copy. I don't know how many, I don't want to lose my copy.
Yeah, that's okay. We probably got it. somewhere.
Anyway, but he said that wetlands, we have not done a comprehensive wetland survey of the alternative route, but we've done a partial survey with the help of Elijah, and I submit, and it's subject to being confirmed on the ground that there are fewer wetlands on this route. And so from an environmental standpoint, I think it's superior. I think it meets the bikers' objectives and it avoids conflicts with other users. There are additional costs in this, and I have volunteered to contribute to deal with those additional costs, because this that important to me.
So-
I'm not volunteering to pay the entire cost of this trail, but I'm willing to help deal with the cost of it. And so I hope we can pursue this alternative because it is the path towards making everybody happy.
I don't know about that, but anyway, you were saying a while ago that you'd pay up to $4,000 for the cost of this study.
Yeah.
And so someone from the town needs to get a hold of you when we hire someone and make sure that you get the bill for that.
Yeah, I'm sure you have my address.
Yeah, but just clarifying.
Yeah,
So-
so just send me the bill.
Okay. George,
So in summary, just to back up a little bit, in the meantime, we have the right to ride our bicycles on a trail that's now closed. And this, whatever's going on with a replacement route around, whether this goes to court, whatever happens, effectively now the trail is closed down to bicycles. And however long this takes to work out, I am still completely engaged with John in discussions about possible alternatives. I think that John's assessment is pretty rosy. There's also conservation land easement questions that the town now has the town's current legal right of way would be to replace it in an equal manner would be a significant expense. And I've heard estimates to get things through that trail anywhere from $30,000 to $100,000 to get that changed. And the fact is that currently a piece of land is owned with a legal right of way through it. And in the meantime, to have it closed to bicycles and only be allowed to walk them just feels, I feel very slighted by that. And I take it looks very much to me like a ruse and not like a legitimate request to walk a bicycle on a perfectly fine piece of trail, not just, not through the wet areas. So just to back up, I'd like to just resubmit that I would like to change the signage and have that policy changed. And so whatever happens, whatever's in the work, this should change right away. The trails open up in May around Vermont. This trail's been closed for a while. This could clearly go on forever because there seems to be no like impetus towards resolving this. It's just dragging on and on and on. So I just want to back up and make that statement to make sure that that's heard. I'm asking for permission to do this.
well, let me just say before I forget again, Paul Gillies, as my memory serves me, said that we can do whatever we want to do because we're the top dogs here. And so if we decide that we want to open all the legal trails up to more than pedestrians, we can do it. So I guess my point is, I'm ready to talk about it amongst the select board and see what happens.
Great.
I just wanted to add that, to go back to all the individuals and committees that have been involved, and I know that the Legal Trails Committee and the Planning Commission put together recommendations. I believe Laura might have made that at late September. There are so many meetings. In fact, if you look at I haven't gone back and looked at all the documentation that's under the Legal Trails tab at the website. It's a novel. It's actually getting up there towards Tolstoy level, comedy and tragedy and everything else in between. And the number of people that have weighed in, and there are a few people that agree with John's position. There are many people that you've heard of from town, and there was talk about experts, and of course last summer there were a number of experts that work on trails, whether it's the Northeast Kingdom. I know Carl Demrow was here. I know that Zach Freeman was here. I know that we talked about big bike events, concessions were made, and I think very reasonable ones. No large events of any type, even when the trails are dry, should go through those trails. Signage was discussed. We've talked about it again tonight. So it's, if you were just to kind of look at the consensus of at least who you've heard from. Now, we haven't gone and, had some special town meeting about it, and that would be like another administrative headache to go through. That there seems to be a pretty clear consensus to have, what was the original thought that once again existed for decades, to have, non-motorized traffic, but now with some more clarity, which a lot of this has brought us to, about what the role of the select board is. There are times when the trails shouldn't be used, et cetera. And just to tag on the end of that, a little bit of news that just came in. I see a document here from, I forget her first name. I haven't met her yet, but I know her husband, Tyler Cohen, one of the organizers of the Ranger. They have offered, and I suggested to Tyler that he suggest this maybe at one of the next two, or, a select board meeting before that event is held on the weekend of the 10th, 11th, and 12th, to provide some additional signage at the entries to the legal trails to remind the Saturday casual riders, this is a no-go area.
Yeah.
And I even gave example of Morrill and Moody Road, and then obviously at the other end of Orchard Road where it meets the Stratford Road. Those would be ideal places to have a sign that says, this, you are approaching a legal trail that is not available for use today.
Right.
Because even though that's not the really big ride, that's not going anywhere near the legal trails on Sunday, but there are still riders out there that look at Strava. And as he pointed out to me, some people that are not from this area or don't dig into Title 19 as much as some of us do, go, hey, the term legal trail, that means we can go there. The Gazetteer says I can use this. So they're not, or they look at some old Strava thing. There have been people that have ridden through here, but they want to be a good community partner, and they're willing to put up sort of that extra signage up on a Friday and take it down on Sunday. So I don't know if you'd like Tyler to talk to you some more about that at one of your subsequent meetings, but he said, go ahead and mention it to you guys. So I'm just.
Sure. What I'd like to propose is that I like to mull things over, as I've been mulling this over for a long time. Anyway, maybe next meeting, we could have a discussion on if we want to put up signs and what we want to have on the signs.
Okay.
And maybe you could bring us some suggested signs or something.
Yeah.
I'll send you some examples.
My point is, I guess we could make up our minds next meeting.
Yep, great, thank you.
Yep.
We appreciate it.
John, are you there? I want John O'Brien.
I am here. I see Michael Soccer waving his hand.
Yeah. Well, okay, Michael, then I want to talk to you anyway, John, just to make sure we're on board. Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to follow up on some things that Todd and George said. I think they're valuable things. The Conservation Commission, I sit on the Conservation Commission, has recently discussed, and Maureen McCullough, I see, is on here. Hope she can speak up because she's also on the Conservation Commission, as is Ellen Hosford on this call. But we've recently, we didn't come to any decisions, but we talked about signage, the Conservation Commission taking a lead on something like this, but also working with the Trails Committee, and I see Jonathan's on the call as well, and even the Town Forest Committee, there's a confluence of those organizations and trails and the betterment of trails for the residents to enjoy in this town. So it could be that and they can provide the volunteers as well. So George is among those, but I'm just wondering about some of those town committees and boards to also be in on this this issue of signage. I think it's a good way to bring people together from all over and be productive and help the whole town situation. The other thing I want to do is I want to follow up. Recently, I heard it was characterized that maybe these were all individual problems in terms of the legal trails. And really, what I want to say is that there's another way to look at this. That really there's only, the real issue here is that we're talking about legal trails, the legal right of way of the residents of this town to use these trails. And it's one issue. It's not a bunch of different ones. I will say that approaching the management or of the individual legal trails should be approached from an individual one by one. But, you know, the restoration of these trails, because they're all restorable, you know, and there's a 49.5-foot right of way there. So it's not like a little narrow, if there's a little path that's wet, you know, then there is some other room there. So I do want to just, again, characterize the issue not as 4 or 5 individual problems, but really, you know, these are all legal trails, they're all legal right of ways, and we want to use these legal right of ways for a number of purposes. And I think we can all agree that that's possible. If I'm not mistaken, the signs really should read, I heard that walking only, and I don't think that that's true, and I'd like some clarification. Isn't it that all are welcome, walk your bikes and horses? Is that right, Select Board?
I don't know.
No. Walking only.
I think it's walking only
Yeah.
right now.
Probably it is.
Yeah, I understand that, but I think in the summertime when it's dry, I thought while all the
Yeah, I think it
you know,
was
there were
last.
discussions, I thought it was walk your bike and horse, but you know, everyone welcome, basically.
Yeah. Are you done, Michael?
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, John is here.
I just want to say I'm disappointed that the bikers seem to want to give up on the process of having a conversation about win-win alternatives. I mean, I'm disappointed at the pace of this process. I'm doing everything I can to expedite this process. I'm happy to work with people to have dialogue. But I think saying, well, we're just, you know, we're gonna just we're tired of talking. Right now, we have differing positions on some of the legal issues here. That creates a kind of creative tension that can lead us to a win-win solution. Otherwise, it's going to be a winner take all. And I don't think either of us can be certain of how that's going to come out. But I know that it's not going to be the best for all concerned. I know it's not going to be the best for all concerned. And so the only way to come to a truly satisfactory conclusion is to sit down and reason together, not to force the issue. And I wish you would stick with the process.
All right, thank you, John. Jonathan Bicknell.
Town would support the process.
Jonathan Bicknell, you still want to speak?
Yeah, please. So, you know, what I see here, you know, John talked about a system, and I'm always, you know, I like that approach, right? Something more sustainable. And what I see in, you know, thank you, George, thank you, Todd, for putting this on the agenda. And what I see is people who want to volunteer to help, right? And there's plenty to do. There's plenty of work for everyone. So if I could put a positive spin on this moment, I'm thinking about, I don't know what you call it, friends of the trails. Like there's definitely a need there, and I want to put that out there. Some way to gather a group of volunteers, right? So thank you, George. Thank you, Todd, for your interest. So whether it's signage, whether it's, you know, being aware of the events in town, be aware of usage, I think there's a need there. So just want to throw that out there, friends of the trails. So.
All right, you can be the chair of the Friends of the Trail. There you go.
You're gonna start calling me Rudy.
Nah, Rudy's
Hey,
Rudy.
Rudy.
All
That's
right,
all.
anyone else? Anyone else? Oh, are you raising your hand, Michael, or? Okay, he says no. I don't see anyone else.
Gary,
Yes,
I mean, one thing, I don't quite know how we can do it, but I mean, it would be nice as select board for us to sit down and sort of get at the, you know, the kernel of this whole debate. I mean, because there's been so much public input, it feels like we've never really had a discussion about all this. So if we could set aside time for that, that would be helpful. You know, listening to even tonight, you know, there's certain things like, I think on behalf of the select board, I think all three of us, for example, don't want to give up rights of way that already exist in town. I think that everybody agrees that that the trail should be used by pedestrians. I mean, we can go up, but I think everybody agrees that pedestrians should be able to use these rights of way. So if we could find, those commonalities and go from there, I mean, I'd like to see, for example, and I mean, this is the tricky thing. If the Trails Committee, for example, we designated the Trails Committee as almost like mediators or proactive, and they met with communities like the biking community or the horse riding community and tried to figure out, like, how those communities could model themselves on vast, for example, and work with landowners. Can we find some sort of common ground there? So that as John's saying, that win-win might actually happen, but it may not look like what we've been discussing so far. So I think in some ways that starting to put up signs before we've come up with a policy or ordinance is putting the cart before the horse in some ways too. And then I think as the select board, we have to figure this out, and then everything else will follow.
Can I ask a question? As a select board, John, and I think you guys really do need to talk about this pretty deeply, and I'm surprised that, anyway, would you, if you can only do that normally at a regular select board meeting, 3 of you, but with litigation on the horizon, it's pretty clear, we've seen letters about this before, hadn't said the word tonight. Would that be something that would be maybe warranted to go into executive session for? No?
Personnel, right?
I'm doubtful, but I don't know. We have to look into that.
You might want to check with Paul Gillies
Right.
on
Or
that.
check with anybody.
Yeah,
They're-
yeah.
I'm sure you just look it up online.
Yeah.
But yeah, we need to talk about it more, but sometimes we need to not have 100 people around to talk frankly.
Yeah.
Did you have something more, George?
Well, I just wanted to point out, John mentions that you don't want to put the cart before the horse with that we know that walking is permitted. Well, we know that everything currently is permitted. And so I just I take issue with the idea that everything that we currently enjoy the right to is all of a sudden curtailed for a couple wet spots on a trail. It's but anyways, I'm sorry, but I know this is going on too long, so that's all I'll say on that.
Well, thank you for your comments.
I mean, the problem, George, is that the ATV community or the Jeeping community could come with exactly the same issues and say, we have, it's only fair we're allowed to use all these roads too. So I mean, these trails too. So, I think the select board apologizes that this has taken a long time and the trails are, in this weird closed pending state. But I think until we figure this out in a more equitable way, that's better than just having have every legal trail essentially be a class 4 road. Isn't going to help at all.
No, I agree.
Hey, John, since you're on this, and obviously you're very much involved with your property, also being part of the Orchard Legal Trail. Have you and John Echeverria discussed the merger of where that alternative legal trail goes through and have reached any kind of accommodation, or is that something you're not at liberty to speak about?
No, we haven't had those discussions. I mean, I've seen a map of it, but and the farm belongs to my mother, so she would really have to be part of these conversations too.
Okay, thank you.
Michael Stockton, you have your hand up.
Just stretching, never mind.
Nice. All right, is it 7th inning? Do we all stand up and
Right.
stretch our legs? All right, I think we've exhausted this discussion for tonight. If so, we're gonna move on to the next thing. And I'm sure you all want to stay around for
Yeah.
the electronic sign policy.
Thank you guys very much. I'm
You're
really
welcome.
sorry about all this time and
Thank you.
extra effort.
Well, I guess, Mariah, I think that our next meeting, we should have it maybe not so much open to public, but comment, but the select board should at the very least have a deeper discussion about this. And then Mariah also figure out if we could have executive session about this too. We're not really allowed to talk about this at, the transfer station or, if we see each other around town. It's hard to do it when everybody who has a stake in this, all the stakeholders want to weigh in too. And so the discussion gets fragmented real quickly.
Yeah, I'll look into our options.
All right. Thanks, Mariah.
Yeah, buddy.
Thought that was Jonathan hollering.
It was me. How'd you know?
Oh.
All right, next up. We're not too bad on time. Discussion of electronic sign policy.
So I had tried to reach out to a couple different people, but nobody really has a sign like we do. So there's not really a policy in place. So John and I had kind of briefly discussed in an email. What brought this up was the Chelsea Flea Market had requested to be able to use the sign. And we were just making sure that maybe moving forward, we had some sort of policy on like who could rent it or use it, or, versus who couldn't. Like if a nonprofit wanted to use it for something that benefited like the local areas, that probably was fine. But we probably didn't want to let somebody put "Happy Birthday, Gary" on it, flashing around town.
Yeah, why not?
So if you guys have any parameters you want me to work around, if you just wanted to spitball some ideas of what you think is acceptable versus unacceptable, then I could kind of roughly draft something for the next meeting.
Well, I think you got a good start on it, because that would be my thinking is if it was for somebody in town that weren't, if they were making money and it was going to the church or the fire department or something like that, I don't got any problems with it. But I don't think we should get involved with any private citizen stuff.
What about other towns though?
Well, I don't have a problem with Chelsea, with a flea market, because that's benefiting
Church, I think.
the church and
Well, they send an
and
email.
school club, library,
Yep, right.
that's going to stuff that potentially benefits us. But I suppose we should put a limit on how many towns we could deal with.
Right, maybe the ones that touch us on
Yeah.
the borders or some bullshit like that.
Could I jump in? This is Brenda.
Jump in, Brenda.
So one of the things we got it under was emergency status for COVID.
Yeah.
And they said once the COVID is officially over, then we could use it for our own business. And we've been sort of stretching that point off and on. But one of the other things that we had intended it for was the road crew. And if we had a fire or an emergency, you're going to shut things down. So if you get in the policy of loaning it out to towns, and we're one of the few in the area, it could be out of town a lot.
Well,
No,
I
no.
don't think we should loan it out,
No,
but if the Chelsea flea market wanted to have it right here in front of the
In Tunbridge.
town clerk's office, saying there's a flea market in Chelsea, I don't see a big problem with that. But no, I don't
Right.
want it to leave town.
Okay, that's clearer for me, because I'd be worried
Unless
about the fire
unless
department
it-
trying to retrieve it.
right.
Unless it can come to West Tunbridge. That's kind of like leaving town.
Well,
No, I think that should be in the policy. It can't go to West Tunbridge.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a passport.
Nobody
Right.
knows how to get there. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna take hours. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda.
Is West Hembridge a not-for-profit, Mike?
That's right.
Generally.
Most of us are.
Well, and Mariah, I think, right, what we were talking about, like, it would have to be a not-for-profit, so that would include a town. So say, we could we could promote the South Royalton Old Home Days or the Tunbridge Fair, or the Chelsea Flea Market. I think you could say it always has to be pre-approved by the select board. And
Yeah.
you have to, and you have to in writing request the use of it. And I was thinking duration was one thing I'd forgot, that, maybe you only get it for 48 hours or 72 hours, just so it doesn't stay up for weeks at a time.
Yeah.
And we have the right to even cancel it sooner, if something like Brenda's saying, if there are emergencies or all of a sudden, burn permits are really important, or don't burn, things like that come up.
Okay, that sounds good. I will come up with something.
I'd like John's point about the limited time, because there are a lot of nonprofits, and probably the events are going to be on the weekend. So it might be, like a Wednesday through a Saturday. The event's on a Saturday and boom, your thing is taken down, rather than a whole week. I'd say 72 hours max. Yeah.
Can you capture all that, Mariah?
I did. I'm building a train track as well right now while we speak. So,
Multitasking.
Look, really,
Yeah.
multi-tracking.
Some days you're the train, some days you're the track.
Yeah.
yeah. So then the next thing up was the same idea. I reached out to other towns. Nobody had any policy type thing for, honoring town residents. So again, if you guys want to kind of give me a little bit of an idea of parameters you would want for that and how people would apply, and then I can draft something up for us.
I can work on that, Mariah.
Okay, that'd be great.
Something I just popped into my head, there's now and again, somebody dies, somebody in town, and I don't know it, and it goes on a week or two, and then I finally hear about it. It might be neat to just put it, thank you, Todd.
Thank you.
Put it on that sign, like, whoever, Fred Tuttle,
Gary died.
well, no, but not till I die. But if, like Fred Tuttle, 19, whatever, I don't remember when Fred was born, 1922 to 19, whatever, rest in peace, or I don't know. Just flash it there for a couple days. When was Fred born?
1919.
He was close.
They just had a thing about him and the movie on WDV tonight on the way home,
Oh, really?
on one of their history things.
Oh, I've heard that before.
Well, and so maybe just going back to that, we should maybe have a paragraph in there about, if we wanted to use a sign for recognizing, Tunbridge Little League win state championship, or
Right.
somebody dies with their days or something like that, it's just something that I think it's almost like a website. And the more you can keep it, every 72 hours or 48 hours, have something new up there, I think more people will actually pay attention to it too.
Right, yeah, it gets to be the same old thing. You don't even look at it.
Right, exactly.
All right,
Okay.
Alzheimer's help info on website. I don't know about you guys, but I got an email from a woman, I don't remember her name now, wanted to put information about how to deal with Alzheimer's on our website. And so I told Mariah to put it on the agenda, so here it is. I thought it couldn't hurt.
Is that something if we had, say, a town nurse pull down that we,
Yeah,
almost
Yeah.
like medical and town nurse, we could put it under that?
yeah.
Sure.
No one else is here. Do you want to have a mask on?
What?
You want to have a mask on?
Oh, my God. I didn't realize how bad you were.
Thank you. No, I think that's a great idea, John.
Yeah. Yeah, I do too.
All right,
I can also reach out to Jody and see if she wants to email Jeff with just some ideas of things she would want as a town nurse tab, and then I will give him that
Yeah.
link. It was just like a website that you could click on and you could put in your zip code and it would give you different areas close by you that would give you, that could give you help with Alzheimer's patients. So there was
Yeah.
like quite a few locally, so. Okay, I'll reach out to Jody.
Yep. And for Jody or whoever the town nurse might be, is to think ahead as far as like those kind of hyperlinks, so, right, whatever your, if you have a medical ailment or if you have a senior you're worried about, whatever, we could have, probably a dozen sort of destinations that you could click on, and that would be really helpful.
Mhm, mhm.
All right, next up is a liquor license approval. I see it here.
So you have that big one right there in front of you,
Yeah,
Gary, that's for North Tunbridge. Yep. So that needs your signatures, you and Mike.
Does someone want to make a motion? We sign it?
I make a motion that, tobacco license?
It doesn't say, oh yeah, it does say tobacco, doesn't it? Is it tobacco and liquor, or is it just plain
There
tobacco?
should be 2 pages, I think you have to sign.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Liquor
Just
license,
say liquor.
okay, I make a motion that we have Gary sign the
Oh, no, you were trying to sign it too.
tobacco, the select board sign the tobacco license renewal application and the liquor license renewal application for the North Tunbridge General Store LLC.
I'll second that.
Perfect. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right,
And then we had I printed it off. It's in your packet if you want to
Festival.
look at it. But yeah, just a festival permit. I can sign it. I just need your approval. I figured since we were already here working on one liquor license, I would just bring it in and tell you about it. So if you're all set with that, I will
Ooh,
sign that one too.
14. I'll make motion, we have Mariah sign the application for festival permit for the Vermont Nano Brewery Festival. Just your big thanks, John.
I second that.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All right,
Davis is riding his tractor right now. I don't know. He's turning the corner so you can't see him, but
Red?
It better
it's
be red.
no, it's a John Deere. Sorry.
I don't want to see it though.
Crying out loud. What next?
he was respectful of your affinities, Mike. That's why I went around the corner.
Exactly.
Good kid.
For other business, I'll just get my 2 off the table really quick. You got an email, it's in your packet. The ranger was wanting to increase to an extra 100 people. So if that was okay with you, it was for people who were kind of local Tunbridge people. They were only going to accept the wait list. They weren't going to open it back up. They just had a wait list of 100 people. So they were hoping they could accept those people on the wait list. So
How many people were gonna be there, Mariah?
500.
500. So now they want to open it up to 600.
Right. What's an extra 100? No, I think it's probably okay.
Okay.
I make a motion, we approve the request for an increased registration number from 500 to 600 total riders for the Ranger event.
Right, with the understanding that they're local, mostly Tunbridge folks who were on the waiting list. I second that.
All right, all in favor of said motion, if I can say something, say aye.
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 And then my last thing I have to say, and then I'm done for the night, was I also included, I think it's last page in your little packet. I had briefly typed up a memorandum of understanding between the select board and the town clerk. If it is, you know, if it becomes that it's an appointed position, kind of like we had discussed, just kind of understanding between both parties what the select board's role at, you know, as me becoming appointed versus elected and what my role is and that type of thing. So I can email you a copy, John, so you can look at it. You don't have to make a decision tonight or anything like that. I just wanted to let you know that was my first draft. I threw it in there so you guys could look it over if you wanted to.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Good job.
You're laying some track, Mariah.
I had one more thing for other business. I mean, probably Rodney told you, but back to road stuff. I noticed in the minutes, it said we're gonna pay $10,000 for the warranty. He talked to the salesman and actually that $10,000 is in the price of the truck.
Oh, really?
So we don't have to actually pay the extra 10,000.
Oh, cool.
So that was good news.
Nice.
And
We have to make a motion now to time travel and take that motion away.
we can
We'll
just
just
scratch
have-
it off.
We'll have a surplus, but I'm sure it'll be eaten up somewhere, cost overruns.
Sure will.
Yeah, by the time we get the truck.
Does anyone else have any other business?
You guys, Emily mentioned there was a dog that was shot and left for dead in town. Have you heard about this?
Oh,
Ooh,
where?
I don't know.
I just barely saw that. I think Devin had seen the game warden out in a field. I'm wondering if it was down off Russell Road because it was kind of out past like the Royalton Farms place down off Russell Road that he saw the game warden the other day. So
huh.
yeah, I just read that.
Was the dog shot chasing deer?
I don't
I
know.
don't know.
It had been reported missing 2 or 3 days before that, and then it was found dead 3 days later in the field.
Must've been somebody's pop.
Huh.
Well,
Well,
we can sign these orders.
we want to adjourn the meeting and Gary and I will sign the orders. Or do you want to watch us?
Let's adjourn. Oh. I started reading minutes today, Mariah, in the house session, but then we had a roll call and you're not allowed to have electronics on. So that was the end of my minutes reading.
Who comes up with these silly rules?
I don't know.
What's this Sullivan and Towers thing?
Oh, it's just from them talking about the audit that they're gonna start.
Okay.
It's nothing, I don't think it's anything we have to sign. It was just kind of preliminary information on what they were gonna do. I just wanted to throw it in there so you could see it.
Thank you.
What day is pre-town meeting? Where is it?
I believe we had it for the Tuesday prior, because I think that was gonna be a regular select board meeting anyways. And I think we just had it on Zoom, but I'm sure maybe Gary will be in the office too if somebody wants to go in. But I mean, we have the ability to just have it on Zoom completely if we wanted to. So I think that that's how it was warned. It was warned as a Zoom meeting, but
Yep.
up to you as it gets closer.
Is the town report about to end up in our mailboxes?
I don't know. I haven't heard anything else. And I also, I also haven't been asked for like the mailing list or anything, which I think I was last year. Maybe they got it from somebody else or used, the tax information from Becky or something. So maybe it will be there soon, but I haven't gotten an update.
All right. If,
I make a motion, we
There we
adjourn
go.
the meeting.
that's what I was looking for.
I second that.
All right, all in favor of adjourning the meeting, say aye.
Right.
Aye.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you all. You guys are great.
Thank you, thanks for being there, Rudy. Covering our backs.
So if you guys can just close the computer lid, I think that's all you need to do. You should be all set.
That's
We can
it.
get rid of you that fast.
Yeah, that's all you
I'm
need.
glad that's on the recording.
There's
All
a,
right, we'll see you later.
See you later.
yeah, bye.
Down she goes.
Oh, maybe not.
I think you have to close that. Look, maybe it's done now. Not making any noise.
She keeps talking to us.
Yeah.